4 minutes. That's all the time a US Navy warship had to react after something went terribly wrong. Somewhere in the middle of the Persian Gulf, without warning, a missile was launched from the Iranian coastline, heading straight toward an American ship. No news alerts, no global headlines, no immediate panic. But in that moment, everything was on the line. Because when a missile is already in the air, there's no time for hesitation, no room for error, and no second chances. What makes this situation even more unsettling is that it wasn't unexpected. Both sides have spent years preparing for this exact kind of encounter, building systems, training crews, and refining strategies for a moment that could unfold in minutes, but carry consequences far beyond it. And as that missile cut through the air, closing distance second by second, the crew on board that ship had to make decisions that could either prevent a crisis or trigger something much bigger than anyone intended. The location of this encounter isn't random. It happens in one of the most strategically important waterways on the planet, the Strait of Hormuz. At its narrowest point, it's only about 33 kilometers wide, a thin corridor surrounded by tension on all sides. But what makes it truly critical isn't its size, it's what moves through it every single day. Nearly 20% of the world's oil supply passes through this one stretch of water, amounting to tens of millions of barrels moving between global markets. Entire economies depend on this route functioning without disruption. There are no real alternatives, no backup pipelines capable of handling this scale, no easy workaround if something goes wrong. If this passage were to close, even briefly, the ripple effects would spread across the globe almost immediately. Energy prices would spike, shipping routes would collapse, and governments would be forced to react under pressure. That's why every movement in this region carries weight, and why even a single missile launch here isn't just a local event. It's something with global implications.
To understand why this moment matters so much, you have to look at the strategy behind it. Iran isn't trying to defeat the United States in a traditional sense. A direct, open ocean confrontation with a carrier strike group would be overwhelmingly one-sided. Instead, the approach is built around a completely different idea, one that focuses on pressure rather than outright victory. The goal is to make operating in this region so risky, so unpredictable, that it becomes increasingly difficult to justify. Over the years, Iran has developed a military structure tailored specifically for this environment, not for large-scale naval battles, but for confined, high-risk waters like those in the Strait of Hormuz. This includes fast attack craft designed for swarm tactics, naval mines that can disrupt shipping lanes, unmanned systems, and most importantly, anti-ship missiles capable of striking quickly and with minimal warning. These tools are not meant to overpower a superior force directly, but to exploit weaknesses, create uncertainty, and raise the cost of every decision made in these waters. And in moments like this, that strategy moves from theory into reality.
What makes this situation even more intense is that the first sign of danger didn't come from the missile itself. It came from something less visible, but just as critical: a radar signal. Before the missile was even launched, the US warship detected that it was being tracked by a fire control radar system from the Iranian coastline. That single signal changed everything, instantly. Inside the ship's combat information center, alarms activated, screens lit up, and the entire crew shifted into a heightened state of alert. This wasn't speculation or guesswork. This kind of radar lock is a clear indication that a weapon system is preparing to engage. The clock started ticking at that exact moment, not when the missile appeared in the sky, but when the intent became clear. Seconds later, the missile launched, dropping low over the water to minimize detection and closing in on its target. At that point, there was no ambiguity left. The threat was real, the timeline was short, and every decision from that moment forward would carry immediate consequences.
Having 4 minutes to respond might sound manageable, but in reality, it's an incredibly compressed and high-pressure window. Within that short span of time, the crew had to confirm that what they were seeing wasn't a false alarm, identify the nature of the threat, determine the appropriate response, and ultimately decide whether to engage. Each of those steps involves both advanced systems and human judgment, working together under stress. Acting too quickly carries its own risks, especially in a region where civilian and military traffic can overlap. But waiting too long could mean losing the opportunity to stop the threat altogether. This is where the ship's combat systems play a critical role, processing vast amounts of data in real time, tracking the incoming missile, and presenting options to the crew in a way that allows for rapid decision-making. Even with that support, the responsibility still falls on the people in that room to make the call. And in a situation like this, there's no perfect information, no guarantee, just a narrow window to act before it's too late. Once the decision to engage was made, everything moved quickly. A defensive missile launched from the U.S. warship, accelerating rapidly as it moved to intercept the incoming threat. At this point, it became a race of precision and timing, with both missiles moving at high speed and constantly adjusting their trajectories. The defensive system guiding the interceptor wasn't simply reacting, it was predicting, calculating where the incoming missile would be seconds ahead and adjusting accordingly. Meanwhile, the attacking missile continued its approach, maintaining a low altitude and making subtle maneuvers designed to complicate interception. The distance between them closed rapidly, leaving almost no margin for error. Then, just a short distance from the ship, the intercept occurred. The incoming missile was destroyed before it could reach its target, its debris falling into the water instead of impacting the vessel. From the outside, it might look like a clean and controlled outcome, but behind that moment was a complex chain of decisions, calculations, and systems, all working together under intense pressure.
Stopping the missile wasn't the end of the situation. It was only the first phase. Almost immediately, attention shifted from defense to response. The system had already tracked the origin of the launch, identifying the location of the radar and the missile site responsible for the attack. That information didn't just stay on screens. It became actionable within minutes. Aircraft that were already airborne as part of standard defensive measures were redirected with a new objective. The transition from defense to retaliation happened quickly, reflecting a level of preparation designed for exactly this kind of scenario. As the aircraft approached the identified location, they carried out precision strikes targeting the mobile launcher that had fired the missile. These systems are often difficult to locate and track, but launching a missile exposes their position, even if only briefly. In this case, that brief window was enough. The launcher was destroyed, along with another nearby system identified during the operation. The entire response unfolded in a matter of minutes, demonstrating how quickly situations like this can escalate and resolve in real time.
Beyond the immediate events, what stands out most is the message behind them. This wasn't just an isolated incident involving a single missile. It was a demonstration of how deterrence operates in practice. In regions like this, responses aren't just about neutralizing threats, they're about shaping future decisions. If an attack goes unanswered, it risks creating the perception that there are no consequences, which can encourage further escalation. On the other hand, a response that is immediate and precise reinforces the idea that actions will be met with consequences. At the same time, much of what made this response possible happened in domains that aren't visible. The detection of radar signals, the tracking of electronic emissions, the coordination of systems across different platforms, all of these elements played a critical role. Modern engagements are no longer defined solely by what can be seen physically. They are increasingly shaped by data, networks, and information moving faster than ever before. And in this case, that invisible layer made all the difference.
Even after everything that happened, the broader situation remains unchanged. The Strait of Hormuz is still open, and ships continue to pass through it every day, carrying resources that the global economy depends on. But the underlying tension hasn't gone away. The strategies on both sides remain in place, and the conditions that led to this moment still exist. One side continues to test limits and look for opportunities, while the other must remain ready to respond at all times. That creates a dynamic where the burden isn't evenly distributed. Success for one side can come from a single breakthrough, while the other must consistently prevent every threat. It's a situation that requires constant vigilance, ongoing adaptation, and a recognition that even a brief incident can have wider implications. Moments like this don't always make headlines, but they reflect a reality that continues to shape what happens in one of the most important regions in the world. And they leave open the possibility that next time, the outcome might not be as controlled.